My kraut is ready for salt. So I put in, it's supposed to be 2 tablespoons per quart. So I put 4 tablespoons in for this half gallon. That's 2, 3, 'got a big chunk, and that's 4. All right, and then I'll load it with water. So I put my filtered water, I keep it in a glass jar. That should take all the salt down with it. And it does. So I fill this jar up all the way to the top. I don't leave an inch or 2 of space. Most of the food floats to the top anyway. And I just put my lids on. So I'm going to use this lid, which is a particular kind of fermenting lid. I can put the date, today's date, in this lid. So I know today is the 11th. So I can put that I started on the 11th. And it has a hole for the fermented bubbles to come out. So that's 2 different types of lids. So there's this kind with the nipple, and then there's this kind. And I will sit them in a pan. You can see some salt down here, so I'll shake that up a little bit so that that salt gets dissolved. This one, the salt is already pretty much dissolved into the water. And I will watch this for a few days to make sure the liquid doesn't go lower. And if it does, I already have a salt water mixture in my cupboard that I will add to it if it settles. Most likely these vegetables are much harder than okra, so it's not going to soak into the food as much and absorb. So it will, but it'll take some time, but it won't soak up as much water because these are a little bit more solid vegetables than okra, which is hollow inside. So I always have to watch my okra as each day goes by and keep adding water to it. I may have to do that a little bit with these, but I'll be watching it. Today is Saturday. I go out of town next Thursday, so that should be plenty of time for me to add water if I need to, salt water, to those jars. So I'm almost ready to see if I made ricotta. And that's in this right here. Let's see. Yep, there's, so it doesn't look like I made very much, but I'm going to check it out and see. I'm going to turn this camera around and see if I made ricotta. Today is the first day after I did these ferments yesterday. And I didn't look up a recipe for using the whey. And because the whey was from cottage cheese and it wasn't fermented for any length of time, it didn't have any bacteria in it. I heated the milk to 180 degrees. So this morning I looked it up to make sure I was doing the right thing, because I thought, this doesn't have any bacteria in it. How can I make ferments? So I didn't know if the lemon or a little bit of the salt was enough, and it's not. So it will enhance the flavor, but it will not ferment it. So I added 2 tablespoons of salt to each one of these jars. So these jars already had 4 tablespoons of salt, so which equals 2 to 3% of salt that's needed in each jar. So I needed to qualify that today, and I wanted to make sure nobody did what I did yesterday and just poured whey in these jars and left it to ferment without enough salt. All right, I went out of town and I came back, and so these are my ferments and they're ready to go in the fridge. I'm struggling to get the lid off, so I have to use this little tool, which is a oil filter wrench. It came off, and so there's no growth on the top that I'm worried about. It smells good, smells like carrots. So what I do is, this is the fermenting lid. I take it off and then I put a regular lid on it and stick it in the fridge. So that's what I'm going to do with these other 3 jars. And I'll taste it later after they get cold, so we'll see how well they do. These kind of boiled over a little bit while I was gone, and that's what they sometimes do. And so there's the little pans I had them in. So I have those little trays so they don't get all over the counter. And so I will pull these lids off, probably do a video so you can see what they look like as well. All right, so sometimes going out of town can be, I went out of town for the weekend to go to Massachusetts and see my daughter. I left on Thursday and got back last night on Monday. So my ferments, these 4 jars, fermented for about 10 days, and they're perfect. So I smelled them, I looked at them, everything looks great. And this back here is my kefir, and I just recharged it with some milk, and I get fresh milk today. So, and I'm going to drink a little bit of kefir, and my yogurts, one of my yogurts that I'd already opened last week had, so it's no good. So I'll pour it out into my garden, but I have a jar that I actually have made 2 weeks ago, and it still smells really good. So I may be able to eat that one. So I'm excited about that. And my cooler yogurt, what I call my cooler yogurt, it actually smells good. And it's been since the 5th, and today is the 21st. So it still smells good, and I may be able to eat that one. So I may work on that one today as well. And this was ultra pasteurized milk. So I think that's why it's lasting a lot longer. There's no competing bacteria in there, so I think that's why it keeps longer and it's usable. All right, just so you have some ideas about how to do these ferments, and I continue to struggle with them a little bit, but I think we're doing well. I did fill my kefir up, this jar. Actually, this is a clean jar, but I had another jar and I filled it up before I left, almost full, and that was too much because it kind of bubbled over. And kept fermenting in the fridge while I was gone, and it spilled over into the fridge a little bit. So next time I won't fill the jar quite as full. I think that's probably a good level. And so that's another lesson I've learned.